Thanks, Ed. Well, thanks everybody for having me down. Thank you, Ed, for inviting me down. And great to be in Greene. I love this county. I've always had more support here than virtually anybody else, any place else in the state, aside from Madison County, of course. But things are, well, some good news. How many were at the state convention last weekend? All right, so you saw the district. I can't use the same. I'm sorry, the district convention. You know, the good news is that 2 weeks ago, Trump was down by about 15 points to Hillary Clinton. And the latest Gravis poll has them neck and neck. So things are looking good. He's running neck and neck with Hillary in Ohio and Florida and in Pennsylvania, which no Republican has done. No Republican has been at that level since 2004. So that's good news. And I think probably the reason for that is the extent to which Trump, whether you like him or not, he's been able to connect with blue-collar workers. My family, they're all blue-collar. I've got longshoremen and carpenters and loggers and drywall guys, and it's great when something goes wrong with your house. Because there's always somebody who can help you out. But they're all united behind him. And I think that the reason is just kind of his plain-spoken, you know, his father sent him down to work on the crews who were working on his father's development projects when he was 12 years old. He was operating equipment, and he kind of took on the same kind of demeanor as some of those guys as well, and that kind of gets him in trouble, but that's what also makes him likable. But I'm not here to talk about why Trump versus any other Republican candidate, because at this point, Trump is going to be our nominee.
Right.
And I know a lot of people don't like that. And I know that a lot of you supported Cruz, and some supported Rubio, and Kasich and others. And we get that, and we know there are hard feelings. But the one thing that keeps reminding me about why we have to be unified is this one thing. A year from now, the U.S. Senate will be considering the nomination for a Supreme Court justice to replace Scalia and probably other Supreme Court justices as the years go on. And do you want that Supreme Court justice nominee to be one named by Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? It's really simple. I know that some of you are like, well, I wish that Trump was a lot more conservative on this issue or that issue, etc. But at the end of the day, if we lose this election, and every single time that there's a presidential election, you got somebody saying this is the most important election ever. Well, this time, what we can say with certainty is that the balance of the Supreme Court, the judicial branch of our federal government, literally does hang on this election in November. We need this area. We need the 5th. We need the entire 81 corridor. We need South Side. We need Southwest. We need Hampton Roads. We need it all to turn out big, especially this area, a strong Republican area. We need big, big numbers down here. Because where I come from, and I'm elected countywide, by the way, so in Northern Virginia, Fairfax, Loudoun, and Prince William County, you've got countywide elected chairmen. So I'm up in front of all the residents of the county. That's 450,000 people. And I just got reelected. It's a 55% minority district. It voted 60-40 for Obama, twice. But I've continued to win it. There is a way to win it for a Republican. And we're working on that. And one of the reasons I was chosen for this job is because of that. But we can't depend upon winning Prince William County or Loudoun County, because there's a very good chance we're not going to win. We certainly can't count on winning Fairfax County. It's probably not going to happen unless it's a blowout, and it could be. But if it's close on Election Day in November, all eyes in America are going to turn to Virginia. Why? Even before, a year ago, all the pundits said, and they're all correct, that this race comes down to 3 states: Virginia, Ohio, and Florida. Ohio, Trump's numbers are going to be good. Why? Because he's been talking about the hollowing out of the American manufacturing base, unfair trade agreements that are really unfair to our workers and to our businesses. And there's just been a devastation of the manufacturing base in places like Ohio, a lot of blue-collar jobs. Florida, that's Trump's second home. They love him down there. And he beat Marco Rubio in his own state. He's going to win Florida. Northern Virginia is going to be very, very, very hard. We got to balance off Northern Virginia down here. So I'm here to try to make peace. I'm here to take any questions, any concerns you have with Donald Trump. I'm not here. I am going to be running for governor, and I made that known, and I'm going to fight like, you know what, that's the way I am. I just love it. I am not happy unless I'm fighting. And I don't like the establishment very much.
Oh, goody.
But I tell you this, for this election, now that the nomination is behind us, we all got to be on the same page. We really do. And that's why I was sent here, is to take your tough questions about Trump and see what concerns you have and see if we can try to get them over. So with that, I'm ready for the firing line. Yes, sir.
What is his position on Obamacare? It seems like I haven't heard him say he'll repeal it completely, but in other ways he says he doesn't like it. So I'm hearing mixed.
Donald Trump is definitely against Obamacare. There's no question. He's been clear about this. Now, I know a lot of business people who are Democrats. Not a lot. Actually, most of my business friends are Republicans. Bang, 90%, right? I mean, if you're in business for yourself, you know. But I can tell you that small business is getting killed by Obamacare. Mm-hmm. It is a very destructive thing. If there's one thing that Donald Trump is, he's going to be pro-business. He's going to want to bring back the manufacturing core. He's going to want to change the tax code. He's going to do whatever it has to take. He's going to cut any deal necessary to get the government off the backs of business, including Obamacare and other unnecessary regulations that are really hurting business. So, I hope that's strong enough, but I can guarantee you that at his core, he's pro-business, and the one thing that he's promised to do and that he will carry through with is all those blue-collar workers out there who want their jobs back or who are underemployed. Trump needs to reform, and he knows it. And that's one of the areas where he can, almost with the stroke of a pen, take some of the pain off. So.
What about, is he going to go along with this thing of making Social Security in the hands of the welfare system?
Making Social Security an entitlement and means testing it?
That's what Obama was doing.
Yeah. Donald Trump is absolutely opposed to that. And here's why. Social Security is a pension system. You pay into it. No matter what your income, you're paying into it. Of course, it maxes off at 100 and what is it now? 120 it is. You pay into it, and then you can be a billionaire, and you're going to get Social Security back out because it's not a welfare benefit. Right? You're not, if you're on Social Security, it's not a welfare benefit.
Right.
It's a pension system. You paid into it. And so he's definitely not for that. Yeah.
Is Trump likely to try to allay some of people's concerns by naming likely appointees to the Supreme Court or to key cabinet posts in advance? Because the impression one had is that if he were to do that, it would help a lot in allaying some people's concerns.
Okay, so here's the deal, Miss.
Could you repeat the question?
Will Trump name his prospective Supreme Court nominees before the election?
Thank you.
That's the cabinet jobs. Here is the concern. As soon as you do that, okay, as soon as you do that, and I don't care who you are, everybody has skeletons in their closet. I mean, everybody. Everybody's got something Except for you ladies, of course. but everybody's got something that they're not exactly, wouldn't want up in the public domain. When you name specific cabinet officials or Supreme Court nominees, and unless you're absolutely, positively certain that you have vetted them and there's absolutely nothing there, which you're never going to get to that point, when you do that, you take a risk.
But he can say people like.
He can say that, and he will say that. And in fact, I think he has said things like
He
that.
said a few.
Yeah. So he will make statements like people like this, but there is definitely in the campaign the feeling that why take a risk on something like that unless it's can you imagine you say, oh, I'm going to nominate so-and-so for, Secretary of Commerce. Comes out the guy's a crook or something, he did something, or has disposal abuse or something. You don't know. You really don't know what can happen. So it's a very risky thing to do to name a number of people.
By only naming 3 or 4 key ones that would make a huge impression. For
Yeah.
example, he could easily name 2 or 3 potential Supreme Court justices.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Yeah.
And he could name a Secretary of State with relative ease simply because they would have to be, for them to be worth anything, they'd have to be known quantities anyway, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, it's a sort of a false choice.
Yeah.
So he could say, if
People
he said
like,
John Bolton,
yeah,
for
yeah.
example, it would make an impression on people.
Mhm.
If he said Richard Epstein for the Supreme Court, it would make an impression on people.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
No, but I see your point, though. I mean, to just throw out some names like people like, I think that's a good idea. It's a very good idea. Ed?
Corey, before we get further down, I called you after you announced, or it was announced that you were going to be the chair of the Trump campaign in Virginia. I don't know if you recall that conversation.
I do. Yeah.
And I think I said, what are you doing? So you told me a story about going back home for Christmas. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
If you could share, how did you get involved? Because that's a basic step that I've not gotten over yet, but I've been thinking about it since we had that conversation 4 or 5 months ago, whenever it was.
So, he asked me to be his chairman. I had the chance to meet with him. He was going to be in Manassas, and I had a chance to meet with him, and he asked me to be his chairman. And there were a couple things that I was concerned about. I mean, some of the things that, my district is a very tough district. It's a very, very tough district. I mean, it's 7% Muslim, it's 20% African American, it's 20% Latino. You get a lot of white liberals who have moved on from the Northeast. I mean, it's a very tough district. So, and I've been able to win it despite the thing on illegal immigration, but I was very nervous about, what was going to transpire when this is announced. I know there's going to be a lot of angry people. But when my family's from northern Minnesota, and I travel, we go back there, twice a year. We drive, with teenagers in the car, by the way. It's a little bit better now that they got video games. Anyway, but every place we would go, I would stop, and I would just pony up to the, in the restaurant or whatever it is, and I would just mention to people, ask what they thought of Trump. And what I noticed was that the average Joe, right? The average Joe who's not involved in politics, I mean, all of us, we're kind of the political elite, right? We come to these meetings, we're very involved. Well, no, but we are. We know who your congressman is and who's your state senator, etc. Most people don't know. They really don't know these things. And then I started to notice that when you mention Trump's name, the light came on.
Right, because he's an American and they like that.
And that's where I figured out that this is the guy. That even though I don't agree with him on everything, that we're in a watershed moment here in Republican politics and probably American politics, right?
Right.
Because you see it on the left. What's going on in the Democratic Party? The same thing that's been going on in the Republican side of the party, which is people are sick and tired of the same old thing. The same old politicians saying the same stuff, sticking to the talking points that their consultants gave them, And people can see through it, because the average person is smart, and they know they can recognize BS. They can recognize it. You know, if I come up here and I give you a load of talking points that I've memorized, as my consultants told me to say, under here, you're going to know that I'm full of it. You're going to know it. When somebody's speaking from their heart, even if you disagree with them, they're interesting, and you can support them because you feel you can trust them. And I think that's what Trump has done. I don't want to say Trump did this by himself, because the Republican Party has been in a transition over the last several years because we've been out of power. And so we've started to examine ourselves. And like, what are we doing wrong? We're not connecting. We're not connecting with average people. We're talking, who are we talking to? We're talking to ourselves. We're not talking to the plumbers and the electricians out there. So Trump kind of blew the lid off that. He saw that, and the Republican Party is ready for that. On the Democratic side, they haven't done that introspection yet. The Democratic establishment hasn't figured it out. And so they're pushing Hillary, right? They're not even giving their people a choice. We know that. They're just, I mean, Sanders is winning all these primaries, and they keep pushing Hillary Clinton. They're completely out of touch with their own supporters. And when they've done that, the reason young people, now here's the thing, I got to theory, this is a hopeful thing. Young people generally are very politically naive, and they're very left-leaning anyway. Why? Because they don't pay taxes. Okay, when they get that first job, all of a sudden, boom, like, oh my God, why is the government taking 40% of my income? This is ridiculous, right? So I'm not concerned about young people supporting Sanders, even though he's a socialist, because I don't think they're supporting him because he's a socialist. They're supporting Sanders because he's speaking his mind, and he's calling the Democratic establishment what it is. A big, corrupt mess. One time, the Democratic Party was a good party. Long ago. Not anymore. This is not the Democratic Party of our forefathers, of our fathers. And so I think that what happens on Election Day when Trump defeats Hillary, especially if it's a big margin, is this one thing. The only thing that keeps the Democratic Party together is what? There's
Unions.
And where are they going to go? All those blue-collar workers are taking off.
They're going to Trump.
They're going to Trump. The Democratic Party, the only thing that has kept them together, you think of all these groups that they pulled together over the years that they've pandered to. There's no central philosophy running through the Democratic Party. There's nothing like that, not compared to the Republican Party. They have nothing. And when the only thing that has kept them together as an entity is that together they have power. But when that's gone, and Hillary Clinton loses, there's no reason to stay in the party. And it completely unravels. That's my philosophy. I think it's going to be true. I think without the union vote, and the union bosses, they can still say, hey, vote for the Democrats, but they're all gone. Union members, they're all gone. They've already shifted to Trump. So, was that?
Yeah, and then when you got to Minnesota, I think it's small town if I remember, and people know you're politically active.
Yeah.
But many people would never talk politics, but what you experienced at Christmas time was people wanting to engage and talk politics.
Yeah, and the thing is, my family's all, they come from all different, and they're all, like I said, they're all blue collar. Some of them are Democrats and Republicans. Now they all love Trump. They all love Trump. It's made the dinners at Christmas time very boring. Some argument.
Well,
Yes, sir.
Corey, how you doing? I got just a comment and an exciting one at that. Kind of piggyback on what you were saying, and just a suggestion. I'm a Trump supporter. Signed on my lawn for a long time now.
Good.
All for the season so far. Now in New York, so that kind of helped. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, but my texts and my texting on my phone, each and every debate was lit up. My friends are landscapers, bright guys, carpenters, blue-collar guys, cops, firemen from Long Island.
Yeah.
If you look at the numbers on Long Island, with the primary, he killed Long Island. He did very well. very exciting.
Yep.
I had gone back to Long Island briefly in 2001 to help out my parents, having moved here as a retired cop, and we left again when Hillary moved in, so we scrambled real quick.
Yep.
But the feeling there is there. New York is not out of play, despite the balance.
I hope you're right.
I really think
You're
Long
right.
Island and Orange County upstate, it's a big difference. Long Island has the population which is greater than Virginia, so people have to know that. That's just my comment. It's exciting. The other thing is, I would like to see him elaborate on his evolution as a candidate. I've seen him speak about being pro-life and how that's come about,
Yeah.
and how it's come about as being a grandfather and a father and through technology, etc. And that's kind of led toward what's going to be his way of selecting guys for the Supreme Court. I would love him to kind of elaborate on that, to bring the folks, the Cruzes, the Rubios, who are so staunch in their beliefs, to the fore. I think that would be a part of his bridge that would really go well. And when he speaks to that, you could see his heart, but I think he needs to go a little farther with it. He just did it recently on O'Reilly, but they only, of course, snippets. But it is something I'd like to see a little more.
Yeah, so you know that story. So he was interviewed in 1999 about abortion. He said he had no opposition to abortion, not even partial birth abortion. And then after that, he was very introspective. This is even before he started running for president. Within a year, he had concluded that partial birth abortion was absolutely heinous and wrong. And he flipped on it because he started thinking about it. And then he had a good friend, and he tells this story, but he needs to get out more. He had a good friend who was considering an abortion. And ultimately, she decided not to do it. And the baby became her only child and became the love of her life. And by that point, as Trump saw that, he had become, by 2011, pro-life. So it's not as if Trump suddenly woke up one day and said, well, I'm going to run for president, I better switch my position on the life issue. That's not what happened. It was a transition. And when you meet him in person, you can kind of see it. He is very introspective, he's very deep, and he looks at you and he asks you a lot of questions, and you got to be on the ball. I can see why it'd be very tough to be employed by him and have to work with him on a day-to-day basis, because I walk in there and he starts asking questions about how we're going to do on March 1st or the primary and stuff like that, and he starts asking me questions about specific counties, how we're going to do, whether the polls are right, what the margin of error is, all that stuff. And it just so happens that I was ready. If I hadn't been, it would have been, you're fired, No, but he really does listen. I don't know who was I talking to earlier about being a listener. He listens. He really does. He just looks at you, and he's delving, getting more and more detailed questions. To me, that's a sign of humility and intelligence. So,
Well, Trump is the person he's always been. Really,
yeah.
people just don't realize that. And as far as, he's been color coordinated since a kid. Blue collar and rednecks go together.
I thought you were talking about his hair.
He had to put a little, that's part of his halo.
Yeah.
But he's not going to pander to anybody for the election, and he's not going to necessarily appoint some people or announce people that's going to make him look good with a certain group of people unless he's damn ready to do it on his timetable. And that's the way he's been his whole life.
Yeah. Yes, sir. And then we'll
Sure. Kind of jumping off of a couple of questions earlier, and this one in terms of appointing. As a token of goodwill and unification, when Trump goes to Washington, he's going to make a pretty grand entrance. But when he's looking at the Supreme Court, is Merrick Garland still on the table for him to decide, not for Obama, but is he still on his docket, if you will, for considerations, if you know yet?
I think what you're going to hear I think you're going to hear something similar. That he'll throw a couple names out there people like. I don't think he's going to name any specific people like, this is my person. But you're gonna hear more like that. Yeah.
What would you do with a Trump do about sanctuary cities?
Oh, boy, oh my God.
Right up your alley.
What is Trump going to do about sanctuary cities? Okay. So when I met with him, he knew all about what I had done in Prince William County on illegal immigration. He liked it. And I can guarantee you, all right, this is going to be one of the first promises that he's going to keep. The wall's going to be built. The wall will be built. And you know what something bothers me about a lot of these people that are against the wall? These are some of the same people who are against this wall have been saying in their own campaigns, Republicans, I'm saying, well, we need border security. Well, if it's not a wall, what do you think of when you were talking about border security? Border security means you got to have a fence, you got to have a gate, you got to have something, right? You can't just say, well, I don't know what they're thinking. But the other thing is, and we've talked about this, is internal security. He knows about internal enforcement. He knows about the limitations, that the men and women at ICE, they want to do a good job, but they don't give them the resources. And then these people, because it takes years to deport somebody, to put them through the process, they let them go and say, hey, come on back, and then we'll adjudicate you in a couple of years. Well, they don't come back. He's aware of that. That's all going to change. And I wouldn't be surprised if you have Sheriff Arapeo. Honestly, I'm in charge of ICE. I would not be surprised at all. Yes, sir.
A lot of us here, and I was a definite Cruz supporter, but I will support your candidate 100%, because we need to keep Hillary out of the White House. He made, your candidate though, Mr. Trump, made a couple statements that he's had to retract. One, in fact, he couldn't do what he said he would do. Is he getting advice, and is he bringing in good people to consult with him and educate him what he can and can't do now, so he can communicate to the people in the United States in the next 6 months, so they realize he understands what he can and can't do? Part two of that is, who do you think he would want as a running mate, and why?
Well, the one thing about Trump is he has surrounded himself with the best PR people in the world.
It's not just PR, it's knowing the law and what you can and can't do is my concern.
Right. Now, campaign is different from government.
Absolutely.
Okay, so, sometimes when you're in a campaign, you can't get into the nuances too deep. There was an article written by JFK when he was in 1962. And they asked him this question, which was this question, well, what advice would you give to prospective candidates for president in the future? And he said, when you elect a president, you do so because you should be doing so because you trust his judgment, and you look back to what he's done, and then you have to judge him on his judgment and his character, because you don't know what crises, what issues that person is going to face. So you remember talking about the lockbox? Remember that? That was 2000? Talking about the lockbox? Well, nothing ever came of it. It was all a bunch of garbage. Because whatever issues there are today, they're going to be different over the next 4 years. So, but what I can tell you about him is he is going to, the way he does it in business is he finds the best people for that job. And he is loyal to them, and he hires them, and he listens to them.
Is that what he's doing now to get himself ready for that?
Yes, there is a transition going on in the campaign right now, gearing up. He's not disloyal, but there's a transition going on right now, gearing up for November. And it's going on right now. There already has been a change. And I don't know if you've seen it, but
yes, is he willing to take that advice, is what I'm really asking.
Yes. He is not a bombastic, arrogant person. I know sometimes people think that he appears that way.
Early on, he made some statements. One was he couldn't legally do what he stated. He needs to know what he can and can't do.
Yeah, I hear you. And you're going to see some changes in tone and so forth. But on vice president, I just don't know. I don't know. I mean, you had 17 guys running for president. You have a lot of talent out there on the Republican side. A lot of, new, young talent coming out through the Republican ranks.
You think you'll go after somebody that can target one segment of the voters?
I think that we're going to find, possibly, but I think that Trump, he knows what his weakness is. And Trump, he doesn't have any governmental experience. So I wouldn't be surprised if you find somebody who has
Kasich, yes, but you're
more
going
of
to go
that.
after somebody who's going to
Kasich
attract
said he's
voters.
not going to take the job, so I don't know. I mean, Kasich would bring Ohio, which would be pivotal, but I don't know. That's above my pay grade. Yes, sir.
I was, as of last week, I was talking to a friend who lived in Virginia, and who's actually an electrician, and he said things.
A physician?
He's an electrician. He said that he was currently experiencing a slowdown in work. And I said, is it like that throughout all the trades? And he said, yes. Maybe that could be something that the economy, that Trump could speak to in that area, or Virginia in general, as like an issue to bring up, and on his campaign here. So I don't know if anybody else is experiencing that or not, but that's what this guy was saying. He's saying things are very slow.
Yeah.
And to me, that reminds me of 08. Summer 08, there was people that didn't have jobs for months, carpenters and people in the trades. So maybe if you research that and see what other people are saying,
Yeah.
that could be an issue that he could unite people around.
And it's a really good point. And, one of the things, the Obama administration talks about unemployment being low and the number, but the big, really scary number there are the number of people who have either left the workforce altogether because they've gotten frustrated and they're done, or people who are underemployed.
Right.
I mean, in other words, they're driving an Uber and they're an electrician.
Right.
I'm just saying that you don't really see a slowdown in Northern Virginia. It doesn't.
No, there is a slowdown.
Right.
We are feeling it up in Northern Virginia. The economy is not. It is definitely not as good as the administration is saying it is. But I mean, it's a really good point. I think it does feel a lot like 08, honestly, because the reality on the ground is a lot more negative than what the statistics are telling us, I think. So.
Corey, what kind of access do you have to Trump? We're asking questions, you're responding. What kind of access do you have to say, this is what the people in Greene County are concerned about?
Yeah, so I answer to the number 2 guy in the campaign. So.
And he listens.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Look, Virginia is critical. I mean, they need to have us around. You're going to be seeing them. We're going to be working together. The RNC and the RPV. I mean, all this stuff. Running a campaign is not just a one-way street where we're feeding people down into it, and saying, hey, come on and make the phone calls and tell them to vote for Trump, et cetera, et cetera. It's a two-way. A good campaign is a two-way street. Whereas, where the campaign is listening. What are you hearing on the ground? As you're hitting the doors, what are people telling you? Because polls are only so good. A good campaign manager knows this, and a good candidate knows that there's no substitute for that personal interaction with people. A poll is only, it can be very inaccurate, because I could ask you how you feel about, we did this in 2005 in the governor's race. Big mistakes, big, over-reliance on polls. One of the poll questions was in 2005, what do you think about the death penalty? Because King is saying, look, I'm a Catholic, I'm against the death penalty. So we get Kilgore, the Kilgore campaign saying, oh, hey, most Virginians are for the death penalty. Let's run on the death penalty. Well, the problem with this is, if you're stuck in traffic on I-66 or I-95 trying to get home every single day, and Jerry Kilgore comes on the radio with a commercial that says, hey, vote for me because I'm for the death penalty. And then there's a Kane commercial that says, hey, I'm going to do something about your traffic. Okay? So the message was that Kilgore was not connected to people's everyday problems. And that's why the feedback, especially in Virginia, because it is likely to be the keystone. It is likely to be the state that determines the election if it's close. We are taking that information back, and I've got meetings this week with senior members of the campaign. So it's not going. It's being heard. Let's just put it that way, especially here.
This morning on the internet, I ran across an interview. I wish I could remember the person's name, but he purported to be a consultant to Trump, and he made the point that Trump's promise about building the wall was not really a promise; it was just a suggestion.
Well, that was from Eric Erickson.
Yeah, the
that
research.
article. That.
Red State guy.
Yeah.
He's
I don't
vehemently against it.
I don't have any good.
Use the word suggestion.
Yeah.
I don't have any good for Eric Erickson at all. I'm just telling you, it's out there on the internet. And I think it would behoove Trump, because he has made such a huge issue about it, which has resonated across this country with nothing else, which is building the wall. I think he needs to take a few more concrete steps publicly that are just more than saying I'm going to build it. Like saying, hey, I've hired the world's best architect for wall construction, and I've sent him to Texas, and he's going to be reporting back periodically as he looks at the border and what we have to do down there. That's all he would have to do. And he would make a huge impact on the population, because they would realize that, this guy really means what he says.
Yeah.
Yeah, people wouldn't be laughing about the wall.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That I like that. I like that idea. Then we'll go over here. I'm sorry. Yeah.
There's the media is going to be dumping on him as much as they can. The Washington Post has hired 25 reporters to dig and get all this crap. Where can we go to get a rebuttal? His website, tell us where to go, because Eric Erickson put this crap out.
That was a video.
Yeah. They took it out of context. They did the other thing with the bathroom. They take it out of context. So where can we go to find out the position?
His Facebook page is a good place to start.
Okay.
Okay, that's where you're going to see the most immediate responses to a lot of these things. Plus, you're going to see more flushing out of the issues. There's actually, if you go to the Trump website, donaldtrump.com, there's actually more there in terms of policy positions than you might think. There's quite a lot there.
I mean, they took the bathroom thing, he said it should be out to the states, and they took a little bit to make it bad.
Right.
So.
Yeah, but on the bathroom thing, the left wants us to get distracted by these social issues.
Right.
They want us to talk about this. Remember what I just said about the death penalty thing? 99% of the American population is against transgender bathroom idea. I mean, everybody's against that stuff. But if Trump starts talking about transgender bathrooms, and you don't have a job, or you're underemployed, or you're worried about your kid getting a job out of college, that's a big mistake.
Right, okay.
Because they're going to vote for people are going to vote for the candidate who's going to give them the security that they're looking for, especially economic security. So it's very important that the campaign stay focused.
With all,
On this side first, and then we'll go back over here.
We're originally from Long Island, 24 years ago.
Yeah.
We moved, 4 years ago we moved here. Okay. So, with that said, I applaud his entrepreneurial growth, ability, all that he's done. Learned from his dad, Fred. However, I'm really concerned about his lack of knowledge of the Constitution.
Yes.
I just don't see it. He never quotes from it. He says that he's constitutional. I don't hear anything. I mean, I'm going to support him, but that is, I ran my campaign. We all run our campaigns, it seems, on our Constitution, on the Constitution. And most of us, the Word of God. Okay, so getting back to the Constitution, I have a really hard time with that. And if I'm going to call people and knock on doors, which I will, I want to, that's going to be a question that I'm going to be asked. And honestly, I don't know how to answer that as far as Trump goes. Compared to Cruz, let's just pick out Cruz. I know he's a lawyer, but he knows that Constitution inside and out and can quote and refer and because he is a lawyer. Is Trump training? Is he on the plane memorizing the Constitution? I know these are silly questions, but I mean, that's a real concern.
Well, the most important place for this is in my book, is when you're appointing Supreme Court nominees. Because you want an originalist. You want strict constructionist. You want somebody who's not going to veer off and start legislating from the bench. We don't want that. He knows that. He has said so. And by the way, speaking of the Constitution, you know, the first right that is enshrined in the Bill of Rights is what? It's the freedom of expression. And what the left has done over the last 40 years is through intimidation and embarrassment and ridicule, they have shut us up as conservatives through political correctness. And the one thing that you gotta say about Trump is he's blown the lid off of all of that. And the beauty of this whole thing is, even if Trump were to lose, and he's gonna win, but even if he were to lose, the model of Trump as candidate of saying exactly what he thinks, he's proven that it's a successful model, that people want to hear the truth. They just want to hear what you actually think. And I think that now going forward, it's going to be a pre-Trump era and a post-Trump era. Right. The pre-Trump era was political correctness and conservatives being afraid to speak their minds. And going forward, it's completely different. So I know it's a little bit off.
There's one thing to speak your mind, but there's one thing to govern based on the Constitution.
Nancy, Paul Ryan made his interns read Anne Ryan, the Atlas Shrugged, and look where he is.
Yes, sir.
I was just curious if it comes to fruition that the 206,000 felons get their voting rights back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can't assume they're all going to vote en masse for Hillary,
No.
but I'm just saying, given the fact that Virginia is such a cornerstone, a keystone, as you put it, to the election, what strategies in place to start to tackle that quandary?
Well, I have a little bit different philosophy on this than most Republicans. I'll just be upfront about it. I don't believe that McAuliffe did the right thing, and I don't think this whole blanket restoration of voting rights was a good idea at all. But if the courts decide that he had the power to do it, then the last thing we want to do is just complain about it and say, I can't believe that these 200,000 people are going to vote. Oh my gosh, terrible. If he had the power to do it, then holy smokes, we better get on him and say, look, you made a stupid mistake when you were a young guy. You know, you're 20 years old and you robbed a convenience store or something like that. If you are truly, reformed your life and you want to become a good citizen, we want you. If you're going to become a hard-working, law-abiding citizen, we want you. But
I don't necessarily
it's not going to do us any good just to complain about it.
I don't think the scarlet letter applies either. I'm not exactly the same thing for all those people, but I do think that there should be a strategy in place, at least to target them from an employment perspective. That, maybe a trades thing, you're rehabilitated according to the state, but now let's make sure that you have a place to be a functioning tradesman.
They were probably blue-collar people before they were locked up.
Yeah.
And another thing, I work in prison ministry, and those guys, when they get out, they have to create their own job, and they're doing landscaping, and all they want is a job.
Yeah.
That's all they want to do. So that would be a way, the economy would be the issue to speak to them.
Yeah. Okay.
You want to prevent them from going back.
And wouldn't you want reformed citizens over illegals?
Exactly. Exactly. Wow, I got a lot more agreement on that than I thought I was going to get. Yes, sir.
I just want to touch on healthcare for 1 second again. Because the Republican Party and Donald Trump are pro-business, and because healthcare in general and Obamacare specifically is, in your words, killing small business, why not, and Ted Cruz alluded to this, why not take healthcare out of the hands of the employer?
Well, if I were running for president, I would agree with you. But I don't know what to say. I'm not sure what Trump's position is on it.
Now, he does talk about portability across state lines.
Yes, right. Yeah, I mean, why do we have healthcare connected to the employer in the first place? I don't know what the historic reason for that is.
It was started with the unions, and then the insurance company started that.
Yeah.
In one more thing, you couldn't raise wages.
That's right.
The president persuaded employers to add a benefit. And that's where.
Is that right?
Yes.
I didn't know that. But I mean, it's worth, look, it sounds like a good idea. I can't speak for him on that because I don't know how he feels about it. So.
Something to think, I mean,
Yeah.
it is killing, except it's killing small business. I've worked, as a small businessman, I've worked for small businesses. And not only is it the cost, but they have people dedicated just to insurance.
Yeah.
They hire people just for that. So
Yeah.
there's money going out the window there.
Right.
So, I know it's a hard thing to change around, but in terms of business-wise, it would seem like a no-brainer.
Yeah. Okay. Bill?
Well, this Obamacare, a lot of Republicans have said they would repeal it on the first day. Well, yeah, you got to have something to fill the void if you take that away. And the thing about healthcare, I had a business with 485 employees at one time. And you could use furnishing healthcare and a vacation thing and a compensation package as a way of getting damn good people. I mean, you can't necessarily, if you start going with pay, period, by itself, then you keep on ratcheting up the labor force, and one guy's going to outbid the other, and outbid the other, and outbid the other. And so a healthcare and benefit programs is a very good employment tool, especially larger companies or people that employ. It might not work if you got 5 employees, but if you got 75 or 100 or whatever, it's a huge tool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, healthcare was a mess before Obamacare too, but we gotta look at reform. We have to find a way to cap costs and keep costs down while at the same time providing for enough incentive.
We have to ease from one thing into something else. You just can't.
Yeah.
Today is the last day.
There's so many physicians getting out of it.
It's chaos.
People not going to medical school or to law school either.
I think we would probably all agree among ourselves that the veterans and the active duty military are probably Trump's #1 cohesive support group right now. At least that's my read. The one cabinet position that he could appoint early with almost zero risk of finding something unpleasant about that individual would be the next Secretary of Defense, particularly if he picked one of the 4-star generals that have been in opposition to Obama's programs consistently. And I can't remember his name, but there's a Marine 4-star general who fits that bill to a T. Mattis?
Yeah, they're trying to get him to run.
Okay, if you could get somebody like that early on, identified.
What's his first name? James Mattis.
Okay.
Okay.
You put him in as the presumptive Secretary of Defense, you would now have an entity, a personality, a known quantity that all the veterans and active duty military could rally to and rally around, which would strengthen Trump's foot on the ground, so to speak, leading up to the campaign, to the election. I can't think of anything that would be more beneficial than that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was somebody that we were trying to, court for a third.
Yeah, and he's already,
Oh, is that right?
he's
Okay.
already been vetted.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the commandant of the Marine Corps at one time. I think he was on the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Below. Yeah.
So, I mean, this guy is
MATP or
is a
MAP?
known
Below.
artist.
James Gaddis, okay.
Write that down.
Okay, I got it. It's in here.
Going along with all these, I mean, all of the people here are giving you wonderful suggestions for Trump.
Yep.
And what bothers me is he said he's the one that's got all the answers. He's not going to ask anyone for help.
Oh, he needs help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he does. And,
Yeah.
and it makes me very, and we're all willing to help people here. I've been thinking about these things. But it makes me nervous that Trump isn't giving that impression to me. I don't watch television, but I do watch the computer.
I know he can give that impression, but because he believes in coming out very confident, but he does take advice. He really does. He does listen. And everything is passed up. It really does.
Corey,
he does listen.
You're sure
he really
of that?
does.
Man,
I can guarantee.
I can speak to that, actually. I know a gentleman that is on his national security team, Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, who confirms exactly what Corey said. I've spoken with him. He said, yeah, the guy in a boardroom is extremely receptive, very humble, very taken to hearing the advice of experts. So Corey's telling exactly what I've heard from an independent source.
I'd like to hear him say that more publicly now that he's...
And afterward, if you want to email me things, I'll give you the email address when we're done here.
Are you going to give him our ideas?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I've got a little ticker up here.
I think what he's saying is the final decision is gonna be his alone, after all the advisors and everything else, that is gonna rest on his shoulders to make that final decision, which is exactly where it should be.
Anything else? Okay. Well, thanks a lot, everybody.
Yeah.